Meeting to order at this time. Becky, would you do roll call, please?
Mike Copine, John Nicholson, Marilyn Shippert,
Present.
Keen Hudson,
Present.
Jack Scrogstad.
Here.
Mike Zeman.
Here.
If you haven't already done so, if you've got a cell phone, please mute it or turn it off if you would, please. I jumped the gun. I'm sorry. All right. Thanks, Fred. Okay, visitors. Amy, anything to,
I have nothing, thank you.
okay. Stacy,
Nothing to present.
okay. Sheriff? Okay. Mr. Lally, anything?
Yeah, we're just working with all the festivals right now. We assisted with Petunia Festival. That was uneventful. Planning for 4-H Fair now, and then the ultimate at the end of August is Depot Days. So that's keeping me quite busy lately. So.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Boonstra, I can't see you because of the screen, but.
Hiding. No, nothing for me. Thank you, sir.
And Wendy, anything at all?
Nothing for me either.
Okay, boy, we're on a roll now. Has everybody had a chance to read the previous minutes of the previous meeting? Any corrections or changes or anything to be made? If not, they'll stand approved as read. Any questions on the claim reports? Marilyn, any comment on that at all?
Going fine. Last meeting, Jennifer Boyd and Joy Pittman from the assessor's office came and viewed our process. And if anybody from your office wants to come and have it, those people that have been there say it's a learning experience for them. See the process we do. So I don't believe anybody in your office has been there. So if they'd like to come, with the meeting next Wednesday. Most claims are pretty good. We had one last week that Mike and I were talking about with the sheriff and Eric Saunders is going to look into it, but we find something that just doesn't quite fit. Then check this out. So, but the whole process is going well.
I haven't had any adverse comments or heard anything at all, so I'm taking it that is probably a good move. Should have done it or went back to it or done it before we did. But
I think we don't spend a lot of time on each claim, but I think we spend more time on claims that happen in the meetings. You know, looking at the vendor name, looking at the invoice number, that the amount matches. Those things could have slid through so easily.
anybody have any questions at all from the visitors that are here before we get into their reports or whatever? Okay. And we'll start that now. So Stacy, I'll go ahead and start with you.
Not too much has changed from last month. We still continue with our drug court or veterans treatment court. We recently had a meeting in regards to the upcoming changes that are taking place with pretrial starting in January of 23. That'll continue to evolve over the next several months and even into 23 as we continue to work through that. and see how that impacts our office and our workloads each day. So continue to bring that information to here to the meetings to keep everybody up to date on that.
Anybody have any questions for Stacy? Okay, thanks, Stacy. Amy?
I don't have much. Like Stacy said, we're just kind of all working together with the new pretrial services reform that's going to take place in January next year. So we're working with Stacy, state's attorney, judges. So nothing's in place, but I think we're making a little progress. That's all
Okay.
I have.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Amy? Okay, Sheriff, we'll head back your direction.
Morning. Yeah, I got a few things. I'll start out with a meeting that we have scheduled at 10 o'clock today through, it's called Medicaid Assisted Recovery Program. It's a new program that started in about 4 jails so far this year in Illinois. And we're going to be possibly the 5th. After our meeting today, we'll decide if we're going to go in that direction or not. In summary, it's going to involve Stacy's office, Mississippi, the health department to a certain degree, and certainly our jail. What we're trying to do is identify those inmates that are coming in that might be afflicted with opioid use disorder, mental health coexisting disorders, and try to treat them while they're in the jail through medication. And if we can do that, we may, hopefully be successful in their return to outside of the jail, and we won't see them again. So we're hoping to reduce the recidivism rate and certainly the revolving door inside the jail. So it's a good opportunity for us to do this inside the facility while we're there. And with the help of the other entities, after today's meeting, hopefully we'll be starting this program soon thereafter. There is a startup funding source, a grant, if you will, for this program of $18,000. That'll be put into our coffers to help with offsetting the cost of the prescriptions. And we're also able to use our commissary fund to continue or sustain this program throughout. We'll see how it goes over the next couple of years. And so I'm kind of excited to get that started. It's kind of a groundbreaking thing for certainly Lee County, and actually, only being the 5th jail in Illinois to start this. It'd be something to see if it works. It's just another opportunity for us, along with the Safe Passage program and other programs we've started over the last 6-7 years, to see if we can help some of these folks.
Well, sounds good. Are we going to experience any mandated expenses out of this? Yeah, I know you mentioned the fact that there's grant funds there. Will that be a one-time thing? Will that be a reoccurring thing?
That's a good question. That's questions we're going to ask today. I think if this program is successful, there's certainly grant opportunities in the future. But like I said, to sustain this, other than the startup money, we'll be able to sustain some of this through the commissary fund. And we'll see how it goes. If it gets too expensive, obviously we might not be able to afford this, years down the road. But if it doesn't, we're hoping that this will certainly benefit those that are suffering from some of these disorders.
Okay. Anybody have any other questions?
Not directly related to this program, but with all the reforms that are going into effect in January 1, will that cause a decrease in the population? Not be sent to jail?
Yet to be seen, but my guess is probably yes. Yeah. The other thing I've got is kind of some staffing changes and update just for this committee. I know we talked about this couple meetings this year, but we're struggling. We had 2 deputies hired back in November, December timeframe, lateral transfers that just did not work out. Then we lost another deputy to a year-long deployment to the National Guard. So starting out the brand new fiscal year, we're already 3 in the hole. Unfortunately, we had a couple long-term medical issues, and of course, the hiring process takes some time. So the good news is we have 2 that are graduating from the academy August 11th that will go into patrol. And after their FTO program, the one from the National Guard will be coming back about the end of December, which will help us out from the patrol side. We have 1 other selected for patrol, which will be our extra that the county board authorized last year during budget hearings. And he will be starting the academy mid-August. And we have two new corrections deputies that will be starting the academy sometime around September or October once they're hired. So we got a lot of stuff going on with new hires, or replacement hires. With that, and having a new sheriff come in December 1st, we're going through some transition and changes in the command structure. Dave Glessner, currently the chief deputy, has asked to be transferred to the investigations bureau. So it's going to be a lieutenant investigations transition starting immediately. Derek Rankin, a sergeant in patrol, is going to be taking over the chief deputy duties and patrol during this transition, learning a little bit of what Dave did. And also in late September, I'm planning on bringing, if nobody else is slated for the sheriff's position by the end of the month, we're planning on bringing Clay in the end of September and appointing him as the chief deputy for 2 months to begin his transition into all the roles of the sheriff's department. And then I'll have an opportunity to work with him for a few weeks before he takes over 12/1. So hopefully we can make that more of a seamless transition. That's kind of something that's rarely been done before. So I think that is a great opportunity for him and for others to get to know Clay and see what direction he wants to go with the department, even before he takes over. So we're not making moves that he's not familiar with or not comfortable with. I've already discussed what I've discussed with you in this committee today with him, and he is well on board with that move going forward. So
Great.
that's kind of a very quick summary update.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of the sheriff? I'm just curious, where are we at as far as our wait to get somebody into the academy just for the road? Still the same?
Well, with certainly Sauk Valley coming on board in January, that's going to be helpful. We have noticed some last minute vacancies. So that's how we were able to get the young deputies that are in the academy now and graduate on August 11th. We were able to get them into a May class, which we did not have any slots in that class back in January when we discussed all this. So there was some last minute openings. We were able to get their backgrounds and psychs done in time to get them in the May class. That was very beneficial. How that's going to happen from here going forward, I'm not sure, because there are still retirements taking place. And so we'll just continue to keep applying for vacancies in each of the academies until such time as Sauk opens. And then I think we're going to be pretty good as far as getting them in. It's still going to be a time period of when the academy class actually starts. So it could be a January, May, and September class. So you're still going to have to wait till they start. But I think there's going to be an opportunity for those vacancies to be available when and if we need more people.
Okay. Anybody else?
I guess the last thing is I'll just dovetail on what Kevin talked about. We've got a lot of events coming up in Lee County. We've got the pig roast coming up this Saturday that happens down in Nelson Wells Club. We've got the 4-H fair. We've been asked to assist with the Mendota Sweet Corn Festival, obviously out of Lee County, but certainly bordering. And then the Amboy Depot Days and the Pawpaw Labor Day celebration. These are not unusual events. These are events that have taken place for the last several years, but unfortunately, due to what's happening nationwide, you're probably going to see a lot more police presence at a lot of these events, just to be as proactive as we can and keep everybody safe and let them enjoy the celebrations rather than go through what Highland Park did.
Yeah, you can't hit much closer than hitting at home. That's getting pretty close. And I like to see the aspect of the security or the request for additional security. I know it's a cost all the way across the board for whatever agency's involved with the assistance of it, but it makes me feel a little bit more comfortable that there would be something in place rather than having to wait for a response.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because obviously it's something the board's going to have to, I think, get their head wrapped around as well as the rest of us, because it is something that we're going to have to do to ensure public safety and that people can go to these events and feel comfortable. But it is going to be an expense. We don't have the luxury of having additional staff. So somebody's going to have to come off the road or come off their day off to work some of these events. So there is going to be some overtime that's going to be incurred during these events. But I can't, in my mind, not help support these events, especially the ones that are in Lee County or bordering Lee County. If something would happen and we're not participating there, that's something I can't live with.
Highland Park was a mess. And can you stop that? Maybe. Can you prevent it? Maybe. But as long as you've got well, not really even a presence, as long as you've got activity in assisting the agencies or the communities that are asking for it, I think is a strong show of support for them and reassuring for them that, the local agencies are taking their steps to help prevent it.
Yeah.
So, yes, sir.
Just want to follow up with that. Yeah, I think it's hard to prevent these kind of things, no matter how much police presence you have. But I think the community, this being a public forum, I think this should maybe request or implore some of the community members, family members of people who have friends, family members that are mentally unstable or making statements online, that maybe they alert authorities of a behavior that this person may have. And I think that could bring a little bit, not necessarily to make an arrest or to narc them out or anything, just some of this behavior is almost seen. And I think it could be, brought to somebody's attention so that we it can be, diffused before anything does volatile happen, such as this type of deal. So.
Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, I'm not a police officer. Guys here are retired, 3, and they were very quick to blame the police department in Highland Park. And I feel there were probably some irregularities there that maybe that young man should have been red flagged or whatever. I'm an avid shooter, and everything that happens like this just is one more notch in the anti-gun crowds.
Well, I think, and I agree with you.
It just breaks my heart because, and I realize you can only tell certain things. Charlie, Sheriff, do we have a conduit whereby we find some kid that's not doing exactly what he should be doing and saying not exactly what he should be doing, that local law enforcement agencies are brought up to speed on that person?
I'm sure Sheriff can chime in on this too, but it's always been my opinion, and I know law enforcement shares this, that if you see something or you hear something or you know about something that has anything to do with anything, any type of violence or anything like that, it's better to be safe than sorry. Just share with law enforcement, let them know what's going on and why you're concerned. There may not be anything that comes from it from there. It may be that they find out that there's no merit to the complaints or whatever it may be, but they can't do something if they don't know something.
Absolutely. I agree. The red flag laws are slippery slope sometimes, but there's certain things that have to be reported to local law enforcement agencies. Hopefully they'll use their better judgment. Just what you said, Charlie. There's no merit to it and go on. But that young man that did the shooting in Highland Park probably never should have been allowed access to guns or knives or whatever, from what I have read.
Or at least had it taken away,
Yeah.
or and an evaluation done. But, police don't, I know the sheriff's department, the city police department has a social media account, but nobody's sitting there looking at every post. And if you're not a friend or a follower of that particular person, we're not going to know. So there are followers of these particular individuals that the police don't know. And if you don't tell us, if you don't tell them, law enforcement, we're not going to know. They're not going to know. I'm sorry. I'm 2 years retired, I'm still, still
It's
call
okay,
my,
Jack. I'm glad you have that attitude.
you know, they can't do nothing about it. So if we don't know, we don't know. And, so I'm just saying, if the public's listening right now, if you know of anybody, if you see anything, just give us a call in Lee County, or if it's somewhere in another jurisdiction, call that jurisdiction. Just so they can have it on their radar. Anyways.
It doesn't work anything but negativity when something like this happens for honest, law-abiding people, as they say. Just gives the anti-gunners another venue to crank on people and make laws that don't do any good or that duplicate laws that are already there.
Well, I think if they would take as much time to take a look at enforcement of what's in place already versus making new to try and circumvent what's already there, thinking that it's going to work. And I'm not trying to get off on a gun safety situation or anything else, but you go back to Columbine when some of this stuff first started. They've been talking about gun legislation. They've been talking about gun laws. They've been talking about this and that. But I question how much activity has been involved as far as trying to correct that or address the issues that we've been experiencing. Highland Park, good indication. I mean, goes back to 2014 on that. And not just one, but more than one occasion that it could have been looked into. And I'm not faulting or pointing my finger at directly at the police department, like what's happening. The police are,
Charlie says you don't know what you don't know.
the police agencies are the red dot in the middle of the target right now. If it goes wrong, it's their fault. And that's not always the case.
Now, these people that are unbalanced will find a way to do whatever they're going to do. If it's guns or whatever. I was listening to a radio station. I don't even know where it was. It wasn't local. But they were discussing this shooting in Japan where the guy had a homemade gun. And, they were talking about all the requirements to get a gun in Japan. And there were like 13 steps that you had to go through. And, it was a nightmare. And so then I'm thinking, okay, they don't have violence in schools. Yes, they do. People come in with knives. We don't hear about that. But Japan's equivalent to our school shooting are knife attacks. So they can't get their hands on their guns. They got another way of doing it. Not saying it's right. I'm just saying it's happening everywhere.
Well, to piggyback on Maryland, if a person is that intent on doing bodily harm to a whole bunch of people, they can probably find a way. But I'm a percentage person. This just is one more thing, make that percentage smaller for the people that can do that type of thing, is to enforce some of the laws that are already there. Get the guns out of the hands of people should never have.
I'm not disagreeing, John. I'm just saying.
No, I understand
Those
what you're
people will
saying.
find another way.
Yeah, they will find it.
I have guns. John has guns. I don't have an AR-15 with 30 round clips. What private citizen needs I'm going to target you. No, you're not. There's one purpose of that machine is to kill a lot of people quickly. Not your shotgun, your crap shooting,
No.
and all that stuff. Would I own one? Maybe. But a 22-year-old, but he passed all the Floyd things and all that. So the multiple magazine thing, military style weapons bothers. End of story.
I think you all
understand
addressed
that.
something that-
We could spend the rest of the afternoon probably talking about that. And I agree with some of it. I disagree with some of it. And I agree with Marilyn wholeheartedly. If somebody's intent on doing it, they're not going to go to the gun store and buy a gun and wait 72 hours for it or anything else. They're going to go steal it. They're going to take it from their parents. They're going to take it from a friend and do what they were set to do. What are the catalysts that are building the mental capacity for the people to do this? Is it the video games that these kids sit there with, and get blisters on their fingers, running the controls and learning how to?
Oh, Dad, guns don't kill people. People.
Yeah, I mean, I can lay my gun on the table and leave and have nobody else in the house. And when I come back at the end of the day, that gun hasn't killed anybody. You know? So,
I feel that there's a lot of apprehension, especially family, friends, to contact the proper people because they feel that many times they don't understand the fact that today is different than it has been over the years, that there's a great cooperation between not only law enforcement, but mental health people, but a lot of social services. And the apprehension is that the subject may be arrested. Well, talking about things is one thing, doing is another, as we know, but I think emphasis needs to be made on that fact. And, like public information, whatever, the media is doing it, but, I just think it's the issue that people have to realize if there's a point here, contact somebody, get the information to the right people. So there can be people get involved in this issue and probably, perhaps stop something from happening. But I think the apprehension fact is a main thing because everybody feels that Jack mentioned the fact narking off somebody, but would you rather, my philosophy is I'd rather see something, people get involved in something and prevent something than later after something happens, they wish they, they woulda, coulda, shoulda act. But I just feel that the system's working and especially now doing the best they can to deal with this issue. And mental health is a major issue. And I think everybody throughout the country is doing the best they can, especially, your social services, law enforcement, everyone to try to address it. But it's got to be at a point is that people have to realize that it is a issue, a sickness, obviously, and it has to be dealt with and not necessarily apprehension and arrest. That's why we call it an evaluation to see if further services need to be for these individuals.
any other comments?
I think you're all hitting on some good topics. And I know Charlie and Stacy are intimately aware of the mental health issues and how we have to deal with them. And it used to be that, incarceration was it, you just put them away, out of sight, out of mind. And, over my 8 years here and working with, state's attorney's office and probation here locally, we've really got probably one of the best systems that I've ever seen, in different areas I've worked as far as the communication, collaboration together and trying to work together and understanding each other's plight when it comes to mental health and drug abuse and things of that nature. And we're doing our best to try to help all of them. We also run up against a roadblock, from a state perspective and funding perspective, where Department of Human Services is deplorably underfunded. We can't get folks that need help the help they need in a timely fashion, and they deteriorate while they're incarcerated. That's simply what happens in just about all our jails. So that's one step that needs to be taken in the right direction, is fund those folks properly so we can get these individuals evaluated more quickly and get them to treatment, because they don't need incarceration. A lot of them don't need it to be incarcerated. They may have committed some crimes, yes, but originally why they did is something is wrong with them, either mentally or from a drug abuse situation or whatever it might be. So they need that help first. And let's try to get them that help. And locally, we've done the best we possibly can. Secondly, we've got a crisis intervention team, and that team's been in place for years, and they meet monthly. We have individuals that we help on a regular basis that we have knowledge of because somebody has said something. And what you said up front is exactly it. I mean, we've heard the quote before, see something, say something. It goes back to the active shooter training in the schools. We ask the schools, the faculty, the students, you see something, say something. Because every one of these school shootings, you can go back to it and you can see that there has been a pattern, something that somebody saw, heard, should have known, should have said, and didn't, and then something tragic happened. We want to be the ears and try to do something about that, but unless we're told, there's nothing we can do. So we need help from the media side. over the last couple of years, law enforcement's taken a hell of a hit. And we've been, all been painted with that bad brush, even though there's been a couple incidents, yes, that have been handled incorrectly. For the majority of law enforcement, we do a pretty darn good job. And that's what needs to be emphasized. And media can help us in that respect. And they're not doing that still to this day, unfortunately. So people are reluctant to say anything to us, any of our offices. So until that changes, we're not going to have that direct line of communication, back and forth communication to help us identify some of those people. How many crimes, Mike, when you were a deputy, Keen, Jack, were you able to solve because you had information from the community?
If you had.
That's the way
good-
we solve crimes, right?
If you
Really?
had good conversation, communications with people.
Develop that rapport and you get the confidential sources or just somebody in general that is comfortable with saying something. I just had an incident last week where a person had an incident, several incidents that were going on, and were reluctant to say anything to law enforcement until this last incident happened. It could have been tragic. Thankfully, it wasn't, but it's something we could have helped address and been more proactive. And, you know, I implore upon people to say something to us. We would rather be called and address something and be proactive and be prepared and nothing happen than never be called and never be prepared to be able to stop whatever that incident is. You know, it's not a cry wolf thing. Please call us. We can do what we can do to be proactive and be prepared to help stop whatever that situation is if we know about it. So you've all hit on really good topics here, and there's a couple things that can be done. I just want you to also know that there are things locally that have been done and have been done very well for the last few years. So I feel pretty fortunate working in this area, and you should feel very fortunate living in this area, knowing that you've got these entities that are staying on top as best they can of these situations.
Thank you. Mr. Lally, you're up.
Just those opening comments that the sheriff alluded to also, you know, we also go out and help other counties because in return, they come and help us. So, you know, it's help each other. So again, you need to see, if you see something, say something. That's been a mantra for a long time. And I think that's something we're missing is people aren't sharing the information as they should. So otherwise, thank you.
Okay, any questions of Mr. Lally? Okay, Mr. Boonstra, you're up.
I think you guys have covered that one pretty well. I've said it before, I'll say it several times after today as well, but we work with some of the best law enforcement in the country. I know Sheriff Kevin, Dixon Police Department, Amboy, all the law enforcement around here, Illinois State Police, they work together and they think about these things in advance. They plan these things. They do drills on it. Even the week before Petunia Fest, Kevin and the crew around the area in Stevenson County, Ogle County, you would have seen it adjacent to the courthouse. They were working on drills and they prepare for these kind of things. So we're all in very good hands with them. As far as my office is concerned, we're still trucking forward with the Pretrial Fairness Act, trying to get things implemented. We'll be meeting with sheriff and other local law enforcement around the area later today to kind of talk about what their expectations will be for us, what our expectations will be for them. Try to unpack this nearly 800-page bill and go from there. But been meeting with the chief judge, public defender's office, trying to figure out how the court system part of this is going to work. Last month, we have closed out approximately 24 felony cases. We filed approximately 19 felony cases. As of this morning, we'll be filing a couple more methamphetamine-related cases that are dealing with trafficking from Florida. So last time we had one of those, the person was sentenced to 18 years in the Illinois Department of Corrections. So we're staying plenty busy over across the street.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the state's attorney? Okay, Wendy, saved.
I don't have anything, Mike. Thank you.
Okay. All right, I'm not gonna worry about the quarterly update on the collected fines at this time or the abandoned properties, other than to make the comment as far as the properties. There's movement that's been made, movements that have been approved, and that operation will continue. We continue to add priority properties to the list to continue the actions as we've got going. So, yes.
Just a comment quickly. Getting a little blowback on on the activities of that committee. And it was purposely set up so that it wouldn't be a high profile committee. Mike is the only other board member on it, so that we could skirt some of the OMA stuff legally. Charlie has also commented on the fact that a lot of it will be, I forget how you term it, legal. The actions of that committee the meeting did not have to be published due to the fact that it was a legal advisory board or something.
Oh, so an exception of the Open Meetings Act because we're meeting with an attorney to discuss legal strategy.
Right. And essentially it moves somewhat slow. People don't see the movement on it because essentially that's the nature of the beast with Mr. Zollinger. It doesn't go quickly. It's a court thing and it has certain guidelines. So if anybody has any need for knowledge, let me know, or I'll confer with Charlie on what's going on, but it does go slow. So, and I think we had really only our second meeting, official meeting back on the 14th, and I informed people on the 15th at this committee meeting about what went on. So it's not something that's going to come up every meeting. So
Mike, I will tag onto that real quick if you don't mind. Just as an FYI, for the sake of the board members in this room, you will be seeing a request for ARPA funding for this topic of abandoned properties that did move to the ARPA committee last week. Our ARPA committee approved that. It'll go to finance, and then ultimately this month it'll come before you. The idea right now is that $100,000 of ARPA money will be set aside to deal with the demolition and abatement of those properties. Obviously, taking possession of those properties through the court system and the statutes that allow us to do that is not the end game. The end game is to actually make them safe. So we need a funding source to get us started on that. And so the chairman suggested that amount, and it'll be moving through to the board, and we're looking for your support on that so that we can continue the process of dealing with these abandoned properties.
Okay, any more questions on that topic? If not, we'll move on to an update on the UTV. Mr. Scragstead.
I see that there's old business, the UTV table there. I can discuss some of the things during that, or I can just say an update that I learned today, that Wyoming Township pulled their ordinance allowing UTVs to operate on their roadways. I then spoke with Willow Creek Township person, and apparently they had sent us a copy of our drafted ordinance, and they needed to do their own. And I was trying to get them to, revote on a new one. And they are not participating either. So we'll have to remove them from our map, Willow Creek. And they were telling me that apparently Torma had approached them as well about the liability, that apparently they were told they wouldn't be covered under their Torma. And I says, I don't know if they can actually tell you that they can't be covered, but that's, I don't know. But she was going to find out more about what that was. And then Mr. Zeman provided me with an article in what was the newsletter?
The Perspective magazine, it's a township.
Okay. And everyone has that copy of that article in front of them, from Torma, from a Jim Donnellan, He's a Torma Executive Director. That's the guy I talked to on the phone. Some of the questions in here or the comments that he's making in here, I addressed a lot of these in our conversation. So I don't know when this was published or before or after. Well, it looks like it was afterwards. Yeah, so it was after we talked, but he, apparently what I had to say to him didn't resonate either. Because he's comparing UTVs and UTVs all together. Regardless, we're up against that hill for the different things involving the UTV ordinance, getting the other townships on board. I do have some recommendations when I make a motion to untable this in the next part of the agenda. When that comes.
I just had a quick question, probably goes to Charlie more than anything. Although if there is an accident on a township road that a township that did not honor our ordinance or did not allow UTVs on their roads, are they still liable?
No, because they're not saying to the public, it's okay for you to do this. We have weighed all of the safety measures and we are now permitting people to do this.
But I thought your answer would be Charlie, but I know.
The little article on question 8 kind of jumps out from the highway committee. That if you allow them on a road, you have to make that a 35-mile-per-hour speed limit road and post it appropriately. A lot of these county roads are 55 miles an hour. The ATV UTVs are specifically an off-road vehicle, and it says so in their advertising. So you, like a lawnmower, you can ride it on the county road at your risk, which I don't have a huge problem with. Farm equipment, motorcycles, scooters, whatever. Horse, I don't know if horses are even covered in that, but getting the speed limit down, mandatory down to 35 miles an hour on every road. I don't think people in the county would like. Simple as that. If they're used to going down the county road at 55 and becomes mandatory 35. I don't think they would accept that.
So commenting in that respect, I understand what you're saying, because usually when I travel from point A to B, the only reason I don't fly is because I can travel at a pretty moderate speed with the speed limits set the way they are. Otherwise, I'd park the car and fly someplace. But I've seen it start out as a designated path in and out of the smaller communities, in and out of, I guess, maybe even the Dixon City area. But I'm not trying to make this sound against it, but it has escalated now. Now we're into the modification of speed limits on all of the roads, not just the designated paths. So I don't know. I think there's still some consideration that.
We discussed this at highway committee, and Dave Anderson wants nothing to do with having to put up signs, with being, the highway department being involved. We made a ruling a number of months ago that we supported it as long as we followed the safety restrictions, or however it was written. I can't recall totally, but that was the highway committee's ruling on it. Dave said, go for it. But he doesn't want to get involved.
I'm just trying to find a question on this flyer that Mr. Zeman handed out. I think that specific.
The definition that the state has for a UTV is a vehicle is 64 inches or less. Our ordinance defines an off-roadway vehicle to be 65 inches to 75 inches. So we're not even in the definition of the state law. So we're basically creating our own vehicle to operate on these roadways, other than what the state is. So the state's definition of the vehicle would make these vehicles have to travel at 35 mile an hour posted speed limit signs. So that is the reason why our ordinance will specify the vehicle to be registered to be 65 to 75 inches in width. Width, yes. I was thinking length, but I meant width. So if it came out length, I meant width, sorry. So that's how we are bypassing that 35 mile an hour speed limit. And I explained that to Mr. Donovan when we spoke.
Any other comments or questions regarding the UTV? Anything for Mr. Scrogstad?
He's done a wonderful job, Jack. You have done a wonderful job, but I think this turned into a sticky wicket that you never
It's
anticipated.
no.
And, it's going far deeper than what we ever anticipated. Personally, I think we need to say, we have control over county roads, authorize it on county roads, and let it go.
We're doing it anyways.
Yeah, it's not gonna stop people.
Right.
But that's the only way I see out of this, is to say, okay, we've got control, we've got authority over the county roads, we're gonna say it's okay there. You could go by with your township if you feel you need permission, but they're not gonna ask permission, they're gonna go anyway.
Right.
The action is there. I saw it this morning and I've related to a couple of people here already. I didn't know what it was. I could hear something, looked up and coming at my direction, going south. I was coming north. Some young guy had taken what I'm going to describe as one of these plastic milk crates that handles about 4 gallons of milk, put it on a frame, put 4 wheels and a motor on it. And he's buzzing down the road looking like this to see who's looking, might see him. So there's an example of what Jack just said. They're going to do it, whether there's something in place or not. Can we stop that? And I'm not saying this because there wasn't any squad car around or anything, but I would rest assured that if a squad car would have seen it, it would have been addressed, because this guy would have never survived even a swerve in the road. The wheels on that thing weren't even as big as my dinner plate at home. So it's going to happen.
I mean, they're running up and down Pump Factory Road all the time. They're on Bloody Gulch Road. They're in my subdivision, which would be a township's road. Bloody Gulch is really a township, although I think it's turning into city with annexation agreements. But we're not going to stop them. So, like I said, let's just say we're okay, county. Do what you want.
After Torma's response to it and everything, we've gone from 8 to 6 out of 22. Now we've got 2 less than what we actually are started out with. So I can see where the insurance industry is going to have a major impact on who's going to participate. And I think that by the time the information gets around, the remaining 6 townships that were going to participate, that half of those will probably even back out too. I mean, the thumb pressure is there, and I can understand both sides of it. Jack, I'm sorry, go ahead. Keith.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I just think we should wait, watch and see what happens with the Illinois legislature. They're going to readdress this issue under UTV laws. And, regardless what people feel about Torma, they are a major factor involved here, because you're talking about insurance, and they recommend that right now that vehicles such as this should not, they create a liability and exposure. And, they're asking members, to follow the statute that is written regardless of the ordinance. That sidesteps their so-called definition of the vehicle. And this goes back to a lot of facts, not just the vehicle dimensions and size. They're talking about this 35 mile per hour law and changing it
to the 55. And I mean, this is from the executive director, Mr. Donlin. He says, you know, he made a claim he wished that Illinois statute, they had to back what we're trying to do. And, you know, the possible litigation townships, you know, that get involved in the county. I think, you know, we feel that the county could possibly be involved in civil litigation. The costs are going to be absorbed by the residents of Lee County. And instead of a wait and see what happens issue, I think we're at an advantage at this point to see what our Illinois legislation, if they define and create a UTV law, that actually eliminates a lot of what we're trying to do. And I admire Jack and the whole UTV. Everybody's put a lot of work and effort in it, but why not follow the tails of the state legislature if they're going to end up pushing one, which I believe they will when it's all said and done. I just don't think they had the opportunity in the earlier session to get this done. But I think insurance litigation wise, I feel that we should see what happens, because Torma basically has said that they would support a state UTV law. And this would remedy a lot of these questions that these townships are having right now. And I just feel if we just sit back and see what happens here, and then that'll give us a direction of where we should go. Why should we start something actually like Mercer County tried to do this, and they ended up, they're in all kinds of issues trying to resolve the issue over this 35-mile-an-hour issue, which I understand both sides of that. And as was brought up, when this first started, this UTV thing a few years ago, it was agreed upon at the time that they were going to create a designated trail in Lee County, so these UTVs could go from town to town. You know, it's just like bad roads. If that's a road you get stuck with, that's the way it is. And everybody's going to say, I'm not traveling that road because, you know, whatever reasons, the traffic on it. We get this all the time. Why a lot of different personalities or people want to travel different county roads, you know, that are major peaks. But I think my feeling is right now, occurrence for the civil litigation, that Lee County may be, if someone's going to attempt it, no matter what, and that'll put the burden actually upon Mr. Boonster's office, you know, involvement in the issue. Thank you.
Mr. Scrogstad, do we have any idea what the remaining 6 participants, if they have made any comments, withdrawals or anything?
I was not made aware of the Wyoming. Mike is the one that made me aware of that. So nobody has contacted me. But you know, I'm just a little guy. You know, in this mess. But yeah, as we continue to go forward, if we go forward with it, you know, we'll see them. We may see a decline. We may see an increase. You know, that obviously there has been legislation proposed. It was shot down for reasons. Maybe with the new legislators that come in the midterms, we may get some newer legislators that are more on board with this thing, especially if we can advocate for this, especially in rural counties such as Lee County. And a county doesn't have to. You can put it out there that a county can make a resolution. If Lake County doesn't want to do it, then don't do it. But don't tie the hands of Bureau, Lee, Ogle, Whiteside, the rural counties that want to have this done. Don't tie our hands. We have more of a rural area for this type of operation. So that's what I would like to advocate, you know, after the midterms. I don't think anyone's going to be, you know, passing any laws, you know, while they're trying to get themselves elected right now. So I'm sorry, did I say that out loud? But so at any rate, that's my position on that. So, but right now it's the UTV ordinance is tabled. So whether we untable it and send it to executive to get passed on or to be shot down, by this board is to be determined.
Anybody else have comments on it? Leave it tabled.
I make a motion that we untable the ordinance.
We have a motion on the table to untable,
Untable it.
take it
Take it
off
off the table.
take it off the table.
Whatever your term, whatever your legal term.
Okay, seconded by Mr. Nicholson. State, make sure, state it one more time so we're clear.
Okay, I make a motion to take it off the table, the UTV ordinance.
Okay, it was so made by Mr. Scrogstad, seconded by Mr. Nicholson. Any more discussion on it? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
No.
Opposed, the same.
Aye.
Got that. Carried, right? Okay. So it has been taken off of the table.
Back burner, it's not really executive.
We
Just off the table.
on the table, but we have, that's what we're doing.
Okay, so it's there.
Yeah, it's in midair right now, so.
So is this committee looking to make a recommendation on it and moving it to executive?
Well, I would like to get to that. However, there are a couple of items that the UTV committee, I just thought of this the other day when I was talking with Dixon City about having a letter of understanding of this. And it came to me that we did not talk about this in committee. But one of the ideas that I'd like to add to this ordinance, I don't know if we can do this here, or I would like to make these suggestions to the executive. If someone can help me, if that's how would that do? I can do that. So if, like, for instance, this is the idea that I would like to add there, and we could discuss it. If a registering owner lives within a jurisdiction of a municipality that already has a UTV ordinance, they must register that UTV with that municipality. And the reason why I say that is I believe Franklin Grove has a UTV ordinance, but their fee is only $20. What would prevent somebody from Dixon to register their UTV only paying $20? And then if this gets passed, then they can operate, they're only paying, the $20 with whatever. Then Dixon, if they agree to allow, these UTVs, they would lose the fees as well. So I'm suggesting with this added in there that if I live in Dixon, I have to register my UTV with Dixon because they have a UT ordinance. However, if somebody lives outside, I would add in here, if a registering owner lives outside a jurisdiction of a municipality that has a UTV ordinance, or within a municipality that does not have a UTV ordinance, then the registering owner must register the Lee County and pay the fees required. So it just kind of like sets you up where you have to register that vehicle. And then again, this is up for debate. We can talk about, and then it would just be if a registered owner, UTV owner, has registered with another municipality and paid their fees and is planning on utilizing the Lee County roadways, they must register the UTV. They must register with Lee County, indicating they have received a copy of the Lee County ordinances. So that way they have an understanding what our rules, the rules of Franklin Grove or Dixon are different than maybe Lee County is. So when they register with, they receive a copy of our ordinance stating that they understand what our rules and what roads they are able to travel on. But the fees would be waived once they show proof of that. And then I would suggest that we make the effective date, if this passes, the effective date be far enough in advance that we need to purchase erect signs of what roadways could be traveled on. And it is, and I was just curious if it's possible that as more townships, city villages that come on board to have a changing document that where UTVs may be operated along whenever a map is changed to, rather than creating a new ordinance every time Nelson comes on board, Lee Center comes on board, or Willow Creek decides to come on board. We don't have to create a new ordinance. We can just change that document so that this is the map, these are the roadways that you could change on. So I don't know if that's possible, Charlie, to have that within an ordinance or.
So you got a lot to unpack there. Let me just
I
kind of
know.
back up a little bit. So if it's not going to be uniformly, and as it was discussed earlier, and just doing just county roads, it really complicates things, especially for the people that are going to be getting these permits on how they can even travel on these county roads, how are you going to get to them? That's one complication. So for the registration portion, now Dixon has their permit set up that's right in line with the state statute, the 35 miles per hour, the, you know, what the definition is and everything, which is different from ours. If people are going to be going to get a permit in Dixon or Amboy or Franklin Grove, wherever it is, and they've adopted that same similar state structure, that's not going to fit with ours. Who's going to be checking to make sure that their width is correct so that they can actually travel on our roads?
I wholeheartedly agree. One of the things in the UTV committee was that we weren't doing inspections. It would be if an operator of a vehicle was operating on a roadway, a county roadway, and their width was under 65, then be in violation of that ordinance. And if they didn't have,
Burden on law enforcement to try to figure that out.
I agree. Well, it was going to be a burden on law enforcement to have them certify or check vehicles too. You know, so
Yeah.
One of the comments that we made in committee was, you know, when you go to get your register your vehicle with the DMV, you know, they're not coming out to make sure you got 4 tires on. They just want the money and the registration, then you get a sticker. You know,
It's a little bit easier to say, I have a Jeep Grand Cherokee. Can you
I-
give me a
I-
registration?
I know. I hear you. I hear you. I hear you. We were just trying to make it a little more accessible without a whole lot of complications. And of course, I just made a bunch of complications too here on top of that. So, you know, these were just some of the things that I would like to have added to them. And I don't know if I have to make a motion to add that, to have the executive committee consider those.
Although I voted to untable it, I think we can send it back to the committee rather than to executive. The committee needs to get this thing in order. And then I think we can say, you know, but.
I agree with Merrill. I voted on table, I seconded, that would be, you know, they move it on. But I agree, you know, let's let the
Well,
committee.
I think we're at a point with what Jack just discussed as far as the changes. I think if that's intended to be on the UTV ordinance, how do we make, what's the proper channel of making a change to the ordinance like that, Charlie? We have to go back and,
You can certainly make a motion to amend it right here. But if there's other things that need to be discussed and thought out, then you got to send it back so that they can work through those processes. But again, this committee can make whatever type of amendment they want to it to send along with any recommendation or not recommendation.
So it would be simple enough, for example, for you to change the effective date as part of your motion today and move it forward to executive. But since you've got some language to work out with those other items, I think maybe it is a good idea that this committee still finalize those things and then come back next month and then move it forward so that executive can actually see the language that you're talking about when it comes to these things. I'm sorry, guys, and I know Jack probably really wants this off the table, off his table. But I think I just think it makes sense, especially because this isn't just a, you know, a date change or something simplistic that everybody could picture and understand. They're going to want to see what that language looks like before they say yes or no. So rather than have you get to full board, Jack, and have them go, what? I don't understand. I would suggest you do that. Sorry.
I'll make a motion. That this ordinance be sent back to
I would second.
adding whatever you want they need.
Send it back to the committee with the suggestions that Jack has to offer. If the committee has some other things,
And maybe Jack, before you call a meeting of the UTV committee, we get some language together that you can present that, is in a working format that they can consider.
Do you, just as this committee here, do you like these different ideas that I've thrown out? I mean, just,
Yeah, I mean,
I like the idea on the registration in your
jurisdiction.
jurisdiction.
part of the problem we're gonna run into is the fact that, for instance, Dixon or Franklin Grove, we do have the 35-mile-an-hour speed limit. There's no changes that gotta be made or anything. That would be a logistical nightmare to get some of those changes. So Franklin Grove is pretty simplistic, and we got a whole boatload of golf carts and UTVs and whatever running around town. It creates no problem whatsoever, really, that I see. Just kind of got to watch out what you're doing.
But then you'd have to recognize Lee County's ordinance too, in order to allow, somebody that's outside of Franklin Grove to come in. So you would almost have to add something to Franklin Grove's ordinance to allow Lee County or Dixon or Pawpaw,
Yeah.
But we
ordinances
can't
too.
modify Franklin Road's ordinance. I mean,
Right,
we're-
but-
No, we couldn't, but I'm saying
But
Franklin Grove would.
there's discussion. I've been going to the town board meetings on a regular basis. And just Monday night, there was discussion on doing this, but the town board, I don't want to speak for them, but I can say what was said, is that they are waiting for the county to finalize their UTV ordinance so they can determine how to modify theirs. It was left at that.
Because I did reach out to those different ordinances or those different entities or municipalities that have, and kind of threw out this idea that, so that way we could, their fees were protected or their residents were protected, but yet we would then allow that. So,
And this is what I stated to the board, that the Lee County is trying to get the uniform type of ordinance going. And there wouldn't be a revenue loss to Franklin Grove. I'm not a UTV rider, but they're a nice way to get around in town. Just go up and get groceries or whatever. Different type of thing when it gets out on the county roads with a higher speed limit.
I'm not opposed. I understand the change as far as the licensing and everything, but I do think and agree with the comment that it should be sent back to the committee for the entire committee's discussion and decision on how they want to move with it. So,
Get it in a nice tight package.
right.
I think we have a motion to send it back. to
Yeah, we got a
committee.
motion.
So let's call for the question on that.
Correct. Any other conversation relating to the motion? Any questions on the motion at all? Okay. So we have a motion on the table to send it back to the committee for the discussion on the changes that are going to be made. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Okay, we have nothing slated for new business and Mr. Boonstra, anything for an executive session?
Not that I'm aware of. Thank you.
I entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved by Mr. Scrogstad. Second,